Alright, this is going to be a bit of a different, or I guess it's a long time since I've actually put something up relating to commentary. This one is going to be based on a TierMaker from one of my favorite Pokemon generations in Generation 2. So we're going to be ranking the 100 and, what is it, I forget the number, but it's the total number of Pokemon from Gen 2. We're not going to be ranking, there's a couple of them that have like meta forms, like mega forms from later games. We're not doing any of that, so it's just going to be whatever they had in the actual Gen 2 games, or I guess Gen 4, like the remade versions of Gen 2. But we're going to be going through the list of Pokemon from this specific generation. So yeah, this should be fun. It's like my favorite generation, so it might be a bit of a lengthy video, but I'll try and make it not 20 minutes. But just for word of warning, this is not going to be fully, like, I guess, dependent on competitive battle wise. This is just going to be based on my experiences with the Pokemon and how I found them in the actual base game, because like a lot of these you can debate. Like most of like the ones I might put in like S tier is because I had a lot of fun using them. I found that they were really good for the base game, but competitive ways they might not be very good at all. But without further ado, we're going to be looking at the very first Pokemon, which is a Chikorita. Chikorita is probably the cutest looking Pokemon in terms of all the starters out of all the Pokemon. It's a little it's got a little leaf on its head and it's kind of cute, but unfortunately Chikorita, it struggles quite a bit because it is a grass type, and grass type isn't exactly very good for some of the earlier portions of the game. So with that, unfortunately Chikorita I'm going to be putting in C tier. Same thing with Bailiff. I think Bailiff is a C tier as well, and it's pretty much the same reason to why Chikorita is a C tier. I mean, it's a decent, like it's an average grass type. It's unfortunate because the design of Chikorita and Bailiff, and then Magnaman, is it? What is it? I can never say it. Meganium, I think it's called. The final Evo. The issue is the grass type in Gen 2 get kind of nerfed based on a lot of the earlier gyms are kind of really rough on grass type, so you don't get any value out of the grass type, at least from my experience, until you get to Megnemine or Meganum, which I think, in my personal opinion, I'm going to get hate for this, but I like it at A. It's definitely not high tier A, but it's definitely like it's actually half good. Like, not half good. It's actually pretty decent because it is, other than Fergalligator, I think this is a much better endgame starter to have than Typhlosion, but that's just my personal opinion. But that's mainly because he's pretty, or she is, or depending on gender, it is pretty beefy, and it can have access to, let's have a look at its moves quickly while I'm looking. I know you can give is it hidden power you can learn? It's not going to show me. But there's a specific move it gets access to from a TM that you can give it, and it's really powerful. But yeah, it's level 32 before it can get to Megnemine or Meganem, so it is, I think, the least. It gets to the final form, I think, the earliest out of the three, but I do like Meganem. I don't if grass type was actually decent in the early game, I would have Chikorita and Bailiff a lot higher. But because grass type is not very good in the early game, I have to put it at C. And then we have Cyndaquil. Cyndaquil's probably a B tier because fire's half decent. It's a pretty good starter, to be honest. Cyndaquil. It actually does really well, but once it gets to Koalava, which is his second evolution, it kind of drops off a bit at level 14, in my personal opinion. Koalava's decent, but I don't think it's the best of the. I think it's probably on par with Bailiff. I think the issue that these games have, at least from my opinion or my experience, is Croc-Gnaw is actually, in my opinion, it's the best second evolution. I think we'll get to that in a minute, but the Quilava and Bailiff are really underwhelming for second evolutions, but that's generally a lot of the issue with second evolutions when it comes to Pokemon, is there's usually one like of the starters that has a good second evo, and then the other two kind of lack, and that's because either they're mid-game Pokemon, like when you get to, or it's not really mid-game because what's it called? I forget. I just Cyndaquil gets to Quilava at 14, so it's not mid-game. It's just there are better Pokemon stat-wise in terms of like moves and stuff, and like Quilava's decent, but it's a C tier Pokemon in my personal opinion. Typhlosion is an A tier. I'll give it an A, but I don't think it. On my experience, it's not better than Magnemite, and that's only because Magnemite is a bit more beefier than Typhlosion, and Typhlosion can struggle in the late game because there is certain typing that can counter him. But again, it is a pretty good final evolution. I think it's one of, I think regardless of what people say, at least in my experience, the Gen 2 final Evos have all been really good for me. I just don't particularly, I think that everyone has their own like opinions. I mean, most people would probably have Magnemite probably a B tier, maybe even C, but I liked it at A, but that's because I had a really good experience with it. Typhlosion, it's just I like having access to, I mean, it's the best fire type in the game, so that's obviously saying something, but I don't know, I just never really got, I was never really amazed with Typhlosion, to be honest, but that's completely fine. But we're moving on to my favorite Pokemon or my favorite starter of all time, Totodile. Totodile is A tier. Totodile is like out of all the starters, it is like phenomenal because it really does a good job at the early game. So does Cyndaquil, but I find that Totodile is a bit more suited to like a bit of the all-round player in Pokemon. And he, when it gets to Croc-Gnaw, Croc-Gnaw has access to Dark moves, which is access to Crunch. Crunch is incredibly effective in Pokemon Gen 2. I think Croc-Gnaw is an A tier, and once it gets to Fur Alligator is S tier. It's the best water type in the game, besides, I guess, I mean, no, it is the best water type in the game in my opinion, and it has access to some really good moves. Like it can access, you can put Waterfall on it. Waterfall has a really good like hit ratio, and it does a lot of damage. It is a special attack like Pokemon, so it does, I mean, sorry, physical attack. So if you have physical attack moves on Fergalligator, it is actually really good as well. As we move on to the first of, or probably the first Pokemon that you experience in like the wild, Sentreat. Sentreat is a C tier. It's an average Pokemon. I mean, it's it's a normal Pokemon. I don't particularly like normal Pokemons. I find that, I mean, type advantage wise, they're not bad. It's just they're normal Pokemon. So I don't really. There's a couple of normal Pokemons that I don't mind, but Centrite and then Ferret. I actually think Ferret's a D. I think Centrite's. I don't know. I never was a fan of these two, but I thought if you're like considering you catch Centreat early, Centreat's not bad. It's just Ferret is just Yeah, I Ferret just gets hammered. If you want to try and run a Ferret, it's not very good at most of the base games. So this is actually the next one is a normal flying type. It's a dual typing. If this was normal, I would honestly have it as a C, but this is normal flying and it has access to psychic move as well. So Hoot Hoot, I honestly think is a B tier. I think Hoot Hoot is kind of underrated. I think it's one of the better flying types in the game. It's just not a lot of people probably like using it because it is a normal type as well. So you do get that normal flying type deal. So you will have to worry about dual typing. Its evolution Noctowl I think is an A tier, and that's because it can learn some really good psychic moves. So you can have a flying, normal, and psychic type. You can also give Noctowl, I believe, Tri-Beam, which is that move Dotrio has, where it's that like telekinesis, lightning. It's like that elemental attack. Um, out of all my playthroughs of like Heart Gold, Soul Silver, and then like the original Gen 2, I would always have a Noctowl because it was probably my favorite flying type besides Skarmory. And I think for the most part, Noctowl is actually pretty good. It can have access to a range of moves, and it is only level 20 before it gets to its final Evo. But yeah, I kind of like Noctowl quite a bit. The next Pokemon, Ladybar, I don't particularly like. It is a bug flying. It's a terrible typing. I think that is a D tier, and I'm not going to really comment on Ledian because I don't think Ledian is much better. I think that bug flying is terrible typing because like flying is like pretty counterable to bug. I mean, you do have that, but it is bug typing. Bug typing is incredibly weak. I would much rather, if I had to pick a bug type, I would probably run the next one, which is Spinarak and Ariados, which is a bug poison. Spinarak is a C, and then Ariados is probably a B tier based on the fact that it's actually like, because it is poison typing, and poison typing is incredibly undervalued in Gen 2. There are a lot of gyms that kind of struggle with poison, and some of the Elite Four you can actually kind of. Having a poison Pokemon in the Elite Four is kind of valuable. But I mean, Crobat, which is probably. I mean, there's a couple of poison typing in this game, but it's probably the best poison typing. Crobat is probably an A tier. It's Poison Flying, which is really good. It gets access to Inner Focus and Infiltrator for its what is it? Its abilities. It's a really good Pokemon. A lot of people like Crobat, so it is a final evolution of Golbat, I think. Yeah, it's the one they added from the bats. The bats are not too bad. It's just yeah, it's an A tier. It's one of the better flying types, but it's not the best flying type. Chincho and Lantern, I honestly think is C and probably C. I've never been it's another issue. I mean, I could actually put these at. Chinchin's fine, but I'd probably put thinking about it more, I'd probably put Lantern at D, and that's because it is its second Evo, and it is the typing of a water electric is kind of odd because it's one of those typings where it's like electric counters water, but like you have them two together, but then you get the electric weaknesses and then you get the water weaknesses, which is not very good because electric kind of has some pretty bad weaknesses, and then water can have some really bad weaknesses towards the Elite Four. So I don't particularly like these two as an evolution, but for the most part, you get a Chinchu quite early. It is a water electric typing, so it should be fine for most of the early game. Pichu, which is the baby variation of Pikachu. Pichu's Pichu. It's electric. I'd say it's a C. I mean, obviously Pikachu and Raichu are much better, and it is the first evolution of those two. So I will give that a C. I mean, I don't necessarily think they're quite. I think they're in one zone from memory, but there is a much better electric typing. But if you want to use Pichu, you're obviously going to get like obviously Pikachu and then Raichu at a later point. But I don't particularly. Yeah, I'm gonna have to get through this quite quick because otherwise it's gonna be quite a long video. But Cleffa, it's a baby variation of Clefairy. I think it's a C. Igglybuff, C. They're fairy typing and normal typing. Fairy typing is good. Normal fairies, I don't know, kind of average, but Igglybuff is obviously Jigglybuffs. This is when they started to add the baby variations of them. Togepi is a B tier, and Togekiss is S tier. Sorry, Togetic. I forgot. Togekiss is not in this game. It's in the next one, or is it in Gen 4? These two are good. I mean, they're fairy typing. Fairy typing is really good because it counters dragon typing, and there is a dragon gym leader in Pokemon Gen 2. But yeah, I mean, it's not. Togekiss is a pretty good because it's fairy flying, but it's not the best flying type in the game. Natu is C tier. It is probably just after Bailiff, if I can put that correctly. I might put. Hang on, let me just readjust this quickly. Yeah, Natu is a psychic flying, and it is obviously its second evolution is Zaitu. Zaitu is a B tier. It's okay. Like I shouldn't say it's okay. It's good. It's just psychic flying. It does get access to Synchronize, Early Bird, and Magic Bounce, so those two do get access to those for their abilities. But psychic typing, you would much rather have a Pokemon who can have access to a psychic move than having a pure. Because the issue is flying. If this was just psychic, it would have been flying, but having it be a psychic flying type gives it several disadvantages when it comes to like the late game. Probably to my favorite of the Gen 2 line, because this gets a 3 evolution deal, and that is Marup, Fluffy, and Ampharos. I think, yeah, Ampharos, Ampharos is S, Marup is a B, and then Fluffy is probably an A, but the best way to look at this is Ampharos is an electric type, pure electric type. It has some really good moves. It's probably the best electric type in the game besides the legendary dog that you get later. But it is a really good Pokemon. It's one of my favorite Pokemons of all time. And then, like, obviously there's the pre-evolutions, Marup and Fluffy. Fluffy's really good for mid-game. It can go really well against some of the gym leaders. Moving on to a Balsum, that is probably a B tier, and then we have, yeah, so Balsum is a grass type. It has access to Chlorophyll and Healer, so it is kind of a really good, like, undervalued Pokemon to have as a bit of a third wheel, I guess. But I mean, it's not the best grass typing in the game, but it's still half decent. But yeah, moving on to Marill. Marill is a water fairy, which is a very interesting typing. I think Marill is probably a C tier, high C, and I think Azumarill is honestly high B tier. I think Azumarill is quite undervalued because it is a tank. You can literally, if you can get an Azumarill and put it out against Whitney's Miltank, and it will tank a lot of the rollout hits. It actually can learn rollout as well, so it's kind of good to have. I do like Azumarill. I think it's a really good Pokemon because it's very bulky and would eat up a lot of physical attacks. Not very good attacking wise, but as a defensive monster, it is really good. So if you're looking to have one that just stores, that can store you a bit of time, Azumarill is a really good Pokemon to have. Sudowoodo, which is essentially like the Snorlax of Pokemon Gen 2 because you do get it kind of for free because you have to like catch it to get it to move, or you can kill it. But Sudowoodo, I was honestly never a fan of, but I know a lot of people like it. But I'm going to give it C just because it is pure rock. It does have access to Sturdy, Rockhead, and Rattled, but rock typing in this game is kind of not very good, at least from what I have experienced. It can have a fighting move as well, which probably helps it. I think it can get Brick Break. Brick Break's okay, but I think it can get that can get Hidden Power, I think. But it's not a bad Pokemon, but it's rock typing. Politoed, I think is C. It's one of the worst water typing in the game, in my opinion. I'm not going to really comment too much on it, but Hoppip is not too bad. You get a lot of these mid-game, like encountering wise. I think Hoppip's probably C, high C. It's a grass flying, so it's a very interesting combination. Skiploom, which is the evolution of Hoplip, is it the evolution of Hoplip? No. I forget these ones. These ones are all similar, but like the best of these like grass flying is Jumpluff. Jumpluff is probably like B, high B plus maybe. It's a decent Pokemon as a whole, but it's very very weak in terms of physical attack. So if you get a monster who's gonna like a physical attack monster like Fergie Alligator or someone who can, like in terms of like the gyms, I'm trying to think off my head, but I know there's a gym leader that has a. Oh, okay. So if you get like is it Price, the ice one, and he has access to his mammoth swine or whatever it's called. Yeah, it'll probably just destroy you quite easily. But we're going on to Airpom. Airpom's normal. Airpom's D just because you get Airpoms quite late in the game, like in terms of mid to late, so they're not very valuable, at least. Sunkern, Sunflora, which is okay. So Sunkern is probably a C, like a low C, but Flora is probably low B minus maybe. It's a decent grass typing. It's just, yeah, I mean, it gets access to solar power, which is kind of a really strong move in Gen 2. Yanima, it's bug flying. I don't like bug flying. That's D. Wooper, I was never really a fan of this one because like this. Okay, so Wooper's okay, but like Quagsire is literally a defensive nightmare. It's a really good defensive, but it has like no attacking process. Wooper's probably a C, probably a mid C, I reckon. But it's a very like you're not going to do too much with it. But then the Quagsire you'd probably put as like a low B minus at least to me, just because it is like a defensive block. Like it will tank hits really well, and it has water absorb, which is very underrated, and it has damp, which is really underrated as well. Time to the EV new evolutions, Espeon and Umbreon. A lot of people, this is going to probably annoy people, but I think Espeon is A plus. If it lets me. I think Espeon is probably the best pure psychic type in the game. If you're not looking at like legendaries and stuff. And Umbreon is a dark typing, one of the best dark typings in the game. I'll probably put that as well as an A tier, but I would probably go with Espeon if I was playing in this game. They actually have unique thingos where like if you, what is it? It's to do with happiness. But like if you evolve the Eevee at night, you get Umbreon, and then I forget the way you get the Espeon. Slowking, which is sort of water psychic, it's a new version of Slowbro. I don't particularly like Slowking. I put it at C just because it is another variation of Slowbro, but I was never a fan of Slowbro, so I don't really have a strong opinion of that Pokemon, so I'll just put it in C for safekeepings. Misdreavus, which is a ghost typing, one of the few ghost typings in this game. Oh, sorry, we got Murkow. Murkow, then Mischievous. Murkow is a dark flying. It's probably B, and then Mischievous is probably B, like a low B minus, because it is ghost typing and it has access to levitate or however you want to pronounce it. Unknown is D tier. It's garbage. No more to be said about that. Wobbuffet, which is psychic, it's probably C tier. It's a very weak, it's an average psychic typing, but it's not exactly the best psychic typing, and it has access to telepathy, which is half decent. And it does have a lot of hit points as well. Then we have access to Girafarig, which is like some type of giraffe thingo. I think Girafig is a D tier. It is a normal psychic. It has access to Inner Focus, Early Bird, and Sap Sipper. I would not recommend using this Pokemon. I don't particularly like it at all. Pinnacle and Fortress. Now, Pinnacle is C, like C, mid-C. Fortress is actually probably a B tier because it is, I know I don't like bug typing, but it is steel typing. Now, steel typing is really good in Gen 2, and this, like, Fortress can have some really good stat bonuses and stuff that you can get, and then it's actually a pretty good tank as well, so yeah. Dunsprays, D tier, it's normal. Gligor, which is a ground flying. I actually like Gligor because it is a late game Pokemon, and it does have access to Hyper Cutter, which is a very good ability to have. And yeah, I mean, it's ground flying, so you're gonna have a lot of immunity because it is ground typing. Steelix is probably a B, high B. It is steel ground. Very good Pokemon. It's just there are a lot of Pokemon that can just rip through this guy pretty easily. But if you get this like mid game, you're set. Like, but late game, it's not exactly very good to have. Snubble's C. It's a fairy typing. It's some bulldog that apparently isn't normal typing. It's fairy typing, which is I don't really know. And then Gramble is probably like a low B. This game does give you a lot of fairy typings, but yeah, they give you that because I think there's a dragon gym. I think that's the reason why they give you quite a lot of fairy typing. Quillfish is it's a water poison. I'm not particularly a fan of Quillfish. And yeah, Skizzle is, well, depending what you get, but if you can access the Technician, Skizzle's S tier, and it has Metal Claw as well. So Skizzle is one of the best Pokemons in Gen 2 in my opinion, but you know, you got Shuckle. Shuckle is C. It's average. It's a bug rock type. Heracross is like, so you can only get a Heracross at I think the Safari Zone and the National Park, and they're from a minigame. Heracross, depending on what you get, but if you get Moxie or Guts, it's I want to give it S, but I'll give it A high. I'll give it a high A. I'll give it just above, not there. There we go. I like Heracross quite a lot because it is bug fighting, and its fighting type moves are really good. It has really good moves for fighting type. Sneasel, which is like, I really like Sneasel because it's dark ice. Sneasel is high B, B plus. It gets access to Keen Eye and Inner Focus, which is really good. But yeah, I think it's the only dark ice typing in the game. Coming on to some of the most, I don't like these two. This is Teddiesura. Teddiesura is kind of cute, but it's a normal typing, and you don't encounter Teddiesuras until late game. So by this point, you'll already probably, if you want to have a normal typing, you've probably already got your normal typing Pokemon, at least from what I would experience. But the issue is Urasing, which is its second evolution, is just terrible. I mean, it's a lot of people are either hit or miss with this, but I am of the opinion that it's for a Pokemon that you get quite late into the game, and I believe it's like, what is it, level... I'll have a look quickly. Level 35, I think. Yeah, level 35 is when it goes into Ursing. It's too late. Teddiursa, it shouldn't take 35 levels to level up to get to its second evolution. And the second evolution is just not very good. Slugma and Magcargo, they're okay. They're Fire Rock. Magcargo is probably like B minus, but yeah. Swinub and Pillow-Swine are Ice Ground typing. Swinub is C because it has literally no health. It's quite weak. Pillow-Swine is probably like high C minus. The issue is its second or its final evolution, Mamoswine's a lot better, but it is not a part of this game. They added that at a later one, didn't they? Corsola, which is a water rock, and then Remoraid. Corsola is probably mid-C, and then Remoraid is definitely a D. It's quite not very good. Octillery is a water type that can get fighting moves. It's D. It gets improved in the later games, but yeah, this one wasn't particularly that good. Delibird is an ice flying type. Don't ask me why it is flying, because it looks like Santa Claus and it doesn't look like he has wings. But an ice flying type is quite decent. I'd probably give this a high C+, for Dallaswine if it lets me. Sorry, Delbird, because it does have access to Insomnia and Hustle, which are half decent moves for a water ice or an ice flying type. Mantine, I kind of like. I'm going to put it at like B minus. It's a water flying type, so it does have access to Swift Swim, Water Absorb, and Water Veil. And yeah, I think it can get access to maybe one psychic move from memory. Is it telekinesis it can learn? I have to have a look, but coming on to probably one of my favorite Pokemons in the game, Skarmory. It is still flying. You can only get this on Victory Road, unless you obviously trade. Skarmory, in my personal opinion, is S tier. It is probably the best flying type in the game, still flying. But yeah, two really good like things, because Steel is like really difficult to counter in this game, but Steel flying, having those type deals, dual typing, it's kind of good. It also gets access to Sturdy. Sturdy is really good to have. Like, you can get an ability, obviously, Sturding, so hopefully you can get that. Probably to the best dark typing in the game, Houndour and Houndoom. Houndour is B, and then Houndoom is 100% high A+. Houndoom is really good, if it lets me turn it. It's one of the better late game Pokemons that you get access to because it is dark fire typing. But yeah, it has a lot of good special attack moves. Kingdra, which is Water Dragon, is another evolution to Seadra and the other one. I was never a fan of it. I'd go mediocre. It is Water Dragon. The only reason I'd put it at C is because it's Dragon. I never liked the first variations of Seadra and stuff, but I'll give it a C plus because it is Dragon typing as well. Fapney and Donphan are ground typing. Fapney is C, and Donphan is probably a B minus. I'm just going to get through a lot of these really quick now because we are over 30 minutes. Porygon 2 is C. Is normal. It's okay, but it's normal. You know my opinion on normal Pokemon. Stantler, normal Pokemon, D tier. I think it can get access to a fighting move. Smeagol, I'm going to give all these normal Pokemons like Ds. Smeagol is like one of the weakest Pokemons that you can necessarily get. It's a normal typing, and you get it late in the game as well, which is kind of annoying. Tyrugu, which is the baby variation of Hitman Lee and Hitman Chan. It's a C tier. That's all it deserves. Hitmon Top, which is another baby variation. I'll put them similar. Smoochum is a ice psychic, but I never liked it. It's a low C minus. Electkid, which is Electabuzz is like younger variation. It's probably mediocre C. Magmai, which is like the fire one from Gen 1, I forget its name. It's like, this game has a lot of the baby variations. Miltank Miltank is a nightmare because of Whitney, but it's not a very good Pokemon. Like, I mean, it's a tank, but it's not the best. Like, it's an average Pokemon. But because Miltank can wreck your team, if you're not careful, I will put this as a high C minus. We're moving on to the last few. Blissey, which is a normal typing. Blissey's probably like mediocre C. Entei, Raikou, and Suicune. Entei is an A tier, which is electric. Raikou is an electric. Entei is probably a B tier. It's one of in my opinion, it's the weakest of the three dogs. And then Suicune is 100% an S tier Pokemon. It is a water typing that can get access to, I think, a couple of ice moves. Larvitar is C. Pupitar is D, because I don't like the look of Pupitar and it's kind of weak in terms of its moves. But then it gets probably the best evolution in Gen 2, Tyranitar, which in my opinion is the best Gen 2 evolution. Because it is a 3-stack evolution. Unfortunately, you don't get Tyranitar until like level 55, I think, which is incredibly late. It is a rock dark type, and if you get access to Tyranitar, you will pretty much cakewalk the second half of the game. So more so when you go back to Kanto, obviously to battle like the trainers in Kanto, and then go and fight Red. And yeah, Tyranitar is incredibly good. Moving on to the game's legendaries, Lugia and Ho-Oh. Ho-Oh. Lugia is S tier. It is a psychic flying, incredible combination, probably obviously the best flying type in the game. But I don't really include legendaries as I include them as like their own sort of Pokemon, but we'll put them in this list. And Ho-Oh is probably, in my opinion, Ho-Oh is like, I have bias because Ho-Oh was like I played Heart Gold and I played Gold, so I was more accustomed. Like that was first, so I was more accustomed to Ho-Oh. But I recently played Soul Silver and I appreciated Lugia a lot more, and it has access to some really good moves. Ho-Oh is really good though. It's easily the best. Like these two, easily, in my personal opinion, are like probably like gold standard. Ho-Oh and Lugia are like the gold standard of like legendaries, because like every game has, in like the base game, like the first two games, every game has 2 Pokemon legendaries. Obviously, like on the box art, at least except for the first gen. But you get what I mean. They are really good. They're probably in my opinion, they're top 5 legendaries of all time, these two. But yeah, I'm not going to put Cerebi in because Cerebi is a Pokemon that you can't, I'll put it in there, but I've never used it because it's an event Pokemon. So actually, I'm not putting it in because it's an event Pokemon. It might have went in there, but don't count where it went because I've never used it. I think it's at C. It might be fine at sea because like I haven't used it, but yeah, it's an event limited Pokemon that you have to get through like a specific mean. It's psychic grass, so it's actually meant to be really good, but I've never used it because it is event limited. But I apologize for the long recording. I did said I tried not to go over 30 minutes, but we are for 40. But yeah, I do tend to get sidetracked when talking about TierMaker stuff, so I am going to upload this and hopefully some of you guys get a kick out of it. If not, I might do another tier one. I don't know. Maybe if you guys want to see, just leave a comment on some tiers or stuff that you'd want to see. But yeah, I'm going to go now. Thank you to everyone who watched, and I will catch you guys next time. Bye for now.